Wonderful. My name is Ali, and I'm one of the event board members here at Young Arts Fundraisers. Some quick housekeeping before we begin. We'll hopefully have some time for a few questions. Please do feel free to pop these in the chat at any time, and I'll read these out at the end. If you have any technical issues, please just also message us in the chat. We'll also be recording today's talk, so please feel free to keep your cameras off and microphones muted. And finally, the Young Arts Fundraisers team are running a survey, and we would love to get your feedback to help us shape the upcoming program. You can find the link to the survey in the chat, and it will only take a few minutes of your time. I'll also be sharing some very exciting news about our Evolve professional development program at the end of the discussion, so stick around. So to get started, lots of us in the arts and culture sector started our careers in visitor services or front of house teams and understand just how important that experience is to steward relationships, maintain long-term support and engagement. But when it comes to visitor giving, it can be easy for fundraisers to think of their strategies as maybe set and forget or prioritize their resources on stewarding higher value gifts. But when done well, these small once-off donations can really add up and make a huge impact, not just on the day of the visit, but into the long term. So today, we'll be diving into strategies of visitor giving and how to work collaboratively with front of house teams towards these big picture goals. I'm very pleased to introduce our speakers. Today, we are joined by Eve Alderson, Visitor and Commemorative Giving Manager at the National Gallery, Andy Bell, Head of Individual and Visitor Giving at the Science Museum Group, and Catherine Hills, Senior Visitor Experience Manager at the Natural History Museum. As we go around for introductions, I'd love to hear from each of you. What is the approach to visitor giving at your organisation? Eve, I'll throw to you first.
Great, thanks, Ali. Hi, everybody. It's lovely to be here and talking about visitor giving today. I'm Eve, and as Ali said, I am Visitor and Commemorative Giving Manager at the National Gallery. So I look after all things visitor giving online, on site, and also our in memory program as well. And previous to that, I worked alongside the wonderful Andy at the Science Museum Group, focusing on online giving across their sites as well. I think visitor giving can look quite different from organisation to organisation, but at its core is all about creating those opportunities for visitors to support the places and experiences that they value. And of course, it generates that really important unrestricted income, but it also helps people understand that cultural organisations are charities. It builds awareness of how we're funded, and it gives visitors that kind of meaningful way of participating in our future as well as acting as that kind of first step on that hopefully longer supporter journey. So at the National Gallery, we have the ambition of creating visitor giving that's really visible, that's in line with kind of our visitor experience, and kind of creating that compelling culture of giving across the organisation. So my role was brand new. When I started, it was created to enable more focus to be placed on visitor giving. And I work closely with teams across the organisation, from people like digital, membership, commercial, to identify opportunities throughout the visitor journey, both on-site and online, where visitors can choose to support us. So we already have a number of kind of established opportunities for visitors to give, from donation boxes on site. We ask for a donation in our retail spaces, in our on-site shops. We have the option to donate in addition to booking a ticket online. And our focus now is on making those more visible and creating more opportunities for people to give as well. And that's me.
Amazing. Thank you, Eve. Andy, over to you.
Hello, everyone. So I'm Andy Bell. I'm the head of individual and visitor giving for the Science Museum Group, where I have been now for 11 years. And for context, at the Science Museum Group, we have 6 sites in total, which are Locomotion in Shildon, County Durham, the National Railway Museum in York, the National Science and Media Museum in Bradford, the Science and Industry Museum in Manchester, the Science Museum in London, and last but not least, the Science and Innovation Park in Wiltshire. I don't think I missed anyone out. I'm very happy with that. My role is to manage our low-level fundraising strategy across the group, which includes the fundraising we do with our visitors, of course. And that's what we at the Science Museum Group call visitor giving. And I look after other types of fundraising strategies, such as regular giving and legacy and in-memory giving. Visitor giving Eve is absolutely right. It means maybe something slightly different at each organisation, but it's a term that we use at the Science Museum Group for the fundraising we do with our visitors. And we've been making a direct fundraising ask with our visitors for over 15 years now. It's about creating awareness of our charitable status. It's about asking visitors directly if they want to support us with a donation. And that's both online when visitors pre-book their tickets and on site, both in person with our wonderful front of house teams and via donation boxes, of course, located across all our sites. And although these donations are, I guess, comparatively small when you consider the other types of fundraising we do as an organization, when compared to fundraising with major donors or corporate partners, visitor giving is high volume, and collectively this type of giving becomes extremely significant and can raise potentially millions of pounds across the year. And especially important as government funding through grant and aid only covers part of our running costs. So our visitors can really play a part in what we do, our day-to-day work at the museum. And I can go through our approach and strategy in a bit more detail later on in this call.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Andy. And finally, Katie, can you share how visitor donations operate at the Natural History Museum?
Yeah, hi everyone. So my name is Katie Hills. So I'm Senior Visitor Experience Manager at the NHM. I sit outside of the development team, so we have a separate development team at the museum who do really brilliant work in some kind of giving across that message that Andy and you've talked about. There's a dedicated donate page as well on the website. But where my role sits and the visitor experience team sits is well, when you come on site to visit the NHM at South Kensington, the first thing you'll see when you enter the building is a staff member welcoming you, which is super important as a first part of that visitor journey. But also there'll be a number of donation boxes, and that visitor assistant will ask anyone coming in to donate to the museum. So it's really face to face, as opposed to a kind of a more removed approach that other teams might take kind of over the website. It's, as Andy said, it's such a brilliant opportunity that sometimes gets a little bit overlooked. And I think the NHM, I think for quite a few years now, has taken quite a different approach to some other organisations where there's quite a strong message on entry and exit. And it's worked really well for us. So in the last financial year, we raised over £1 million just on contactless donations alone. So it's something we're super, super proud of.
Amazing. Thank you, Katie. And it's so interesting to think about, how much this ask does become a part of the welcome experience for visitors. And every single visitor that's coming into that museum is engaging with us in some way, which at these big institutions is hundreds of thousands, millions of people each year, which is amazing. Great. So can you walk us through some of the key considerations when developing a visitor giving strategy? Andy, I'll pass over to you.
Yes, no problem at all. I think to give you an idea of what you need to consider, I'll just run through, I guess, our approach at the Science Museum Group and our strategy when it comes to fundraising with our visitors. So if you think of the visitor journey and those visitors that might pre-book their admission ticket, which is free, of course, we don't charge for entry as a national museum. Online visitors can pre-book that free admission ticket, and then, of course, they will be given the opportunity, as is the norm, I think, across the sector, to add a donation to their admission ticket. And for our charge for exhibitions as well, we usually have the option to purchase a ticket, which includes a donation element as well. And through our messaging online, it's an opportunity to communicate to our visitors the importance and impact of a donation on our work, make them feel part of what we're doing. On site, on arrival, our visitors are welcomed in person by our amazing front of house teams. And as part of a tailored welcome to the museum, that's really crucial, are asked if they wish to make a donation to support our work. So it's part of an overall welcome. We're tailoring recommendations to visitors based on the audience in front of us, because everyone is different, of course, and we can deliver a donation ask that is potentially also tailored to that individual based on their interests. If they are interested in XYZ, donations can support XYZ. And at many of our sites, we have dedicated visitor fundraiser roles responsible for delivering this welcome and donation ask to the visitor. You wouldn't see any difference. They are the front of house team, and that's really important. But we have a specialized team, individuals in the front of house team who are delivering this ask at some of our sites. This in-person donation ask remains our most impactful and successful approach out of all the fundraising asks that we have delivered in the last 15 years to our visitors. And that includes online, includes donation boxes, everything. And I think that just goes to the heart of charitable fundraising, that making that connection with your potential donor, being able to say thank you, being able to illustrate in person the impact of a donation. It's really powerful. And our teams are brilliant at doing that. So our success over the last 15 years is really driven by our front of house teams and how they deliver that donation ask. We, of course, have donation boxes dotted around our sites, so that both cash and contactless. For visitors who wish to make that quick tap or quick coin in the box donation, an anonymous donation, they might not want to have that donation attached to the visitor record, for example, if they're booking a ticket as well. So it's important that we be giving everyone the opportunity, no matter who they are, a chance to support us with a donation, no matter how they wish to give. And other ways in which you can donate to the Science Museum Group, maybe less obvious, are things like our retail spaces. So you can donate in our retail spaces, some of them across the museum group, over the phone via our group contact centre, our online shop, our online supporters pages, where you can leave a one-off or a regular monthly donation and even adopt an object. Our visitor giving approach at the Science Museum Group is a truly collaborative effort. So Katie was talking about how she's now in the development team, but we work very much collaboratively with the visitor experience management teams across the group. So in many ways, it doesn't feel like you're separate departments. The fundraising and partnerships team or development team, as it's known in other organizations, work hand in hand with the visitor experience management team to make this happen, this ask on site. So it's very much a collaborative effort. So I sit in the fundraising and partnerships team. We lead on the strategy, the approach, and with the visitor experience management team, we work with them to deliver KPIs around fundraising performance. So that could be income, it could be gift aid, it could be donation per head, it could be donation per ticket, those kind of metrics. And we deliver training to support the team in delivering those asks. But like with all fundraising, I think at the heart of visitor giving, when you're thinking about any strategy, it's about relationship building. So we ideally don't want it just to feel transactional. We do our best to increase awareness among our visitors that we're a charity and that a donation can have a real impact on our work. And we want visitors to feel that they've had a direct and positive impact on that work. So the money that we raise from visitors at the Science Museum Group, brilliantly for us, is unrestricted. So that means we can spend it on where it's most needed. And actually a lot of the core costs of the museum, that's the most important thing to visitors, and what they care about, whether that's the upkeep of the collection, the building, the learning programs, improving the visitor experience. And from a fundraising point of view, more broadly, that interaction, that donation, it could be the first step in a longer term relationship with the museum. And that could be as a return visitor. It could be as some other kind of engagement. It could be, though, a future donor. And it could be someone's first step on the donor ladder. So that one-off donation by a visitor, if we're keeping in contact with them, so if they sign up to our email list, for example, it could be the starting point in a lifelong relationship with us. And they may decide to give again in future, maybe at a higher level. Yeah, every major donor that we have has been a visitor at some point in their past life. And the impression the front of house team deliver on those days is so vital to the success in future of that relationship, because we should, as front of house teams, be the embodiment of our values as an organization, and we should be giving that first impression, not just from a fundraising point of view, that positive first impression from a visitor experience point of view. I think when you're looking at strategy generally for visitor giving, I think if you're starting from square one, I think you need to map out what that visitor journey looks like. So I've spoken about our visitor journey. Put yourself in the mind of a visitor going online on our website. That's when the visit starts. And where are the touch points in that pathway online for the ticket booking to make a donation? And how does it balance with all the other stuff that we are telling visitors about? Because there's a lot to see, upsells for exhibitions, and things like that. How does that balance? Are you making too many donation asks? Are you making not enough? And then, of course, on site, it's the same principle. It's like, where are those touch points on site? You're making sure that you've got somewhere an exit as people leave to donate. You've got that ask on entry. You've got all those points where visitors can be given the opportunity to make a donation. And I think, like, if you're taking the route that we do at the Science Museum Group and putting front of house teams at the centre of your strategy, you need to look at whether they have the confidence, if the confidence exists in the existing team, whether the buy-in and the hearts and minds stuff is there with the team. Would the team understand what we're trying to do? Are they bought in to the importance of fundraising, because we're asking them to deliver this and ask visitors for donations? We need to make sure that they understand and can communicate to visitors the impact of donation and the importance of it. And then you've got those things that I've mentioned already: training, KPIs. What are they? What do they look like? How do you illustrate the impact of a donation to visitors? What does success look like? And how are you going to record performance? Data is key for us at the Science Museum Group. I guess we are the Science Museum Group. We love trials and we love hypotheses and we love looking at data and seeing what the impact is. So yeah, finding out what success looks like, and that might be done through tests and trials. And beyond raising income, what do you want to do? Do you want to keep in touch with those donors who are making a one-off donation? Do you want them to go up the giving ladder, or do you want them to be an annual pass holder? Do you want them to be a member, a patron? What is it? What's the long game? What do you want to achieve?
Yeah, thank you, Andy. There's so much to think about there. And I think you definitely hit the nail on the head when you're talking about visitor giving and you don't know who you're talking to. There's so many people that come in from all kinds of different walks of life. And the really specialist skill of front of house teams is being able to read that really quickly, make a connection, create a great experience, and then also bring in that kind of motivation to give as well, which is a really specific skill set, I think. Incredible, Eve, over to you.
Thank you. That's hard to follow. I completely agree with everything that Andy has just said. And at the gallery, we have a very similar, I suppose, set of donation points to a lot of other organisations in terms of, I mentioned our donation boxes on site to make cash and contactless donations, an option to donate in the shop similar to the Science Museum Group. We've got the option to donate on top of tickets, exhibition and general admission, and a dedicated webpage for online donations as well. We don't currently have an on-site ask in the same way as some other organisations do, but it's definitely something that we're working towards because we know how effective it can be in terms of that people giving to people piece as well. But our ambition for visitor giving program at the gallery is very much something that is visible, that's integrated into our existing visitor experience, and something that's really data informed, which I know Andy touched on as well, because we want to increase the opportunity to give, improve engagement with the touch points we already have, and then strengthen that collaboration across the organisation, ultimately creating those pathways for longer term supporter relationships. And one of the biggest considerations for us, I suppose, is visitor motivation. People don't usually donate because they've been asked multiple times, but more because the ask feels kind of relevant and meaningful to them. And we know our visitors really value the fact that the gallery is free to enter, so supporting something that they enjoy and want future generations to enjoy can be really a powerful motivation as well. And data and insight plays a massive role in all of our decision making. So we're always looking at our metrics from conversion rates to average donation values to donation per visitor, overall income, but also trying to complement that with audience research and testing to understand those perceptions, those motivations, and as well the barriers to giving that people might face as well. So like Andy said, testing and trialing different amounts, different donation box locations, different messaging plays a really big part in what we do at the gallery. And when it comes to kind of our donations on site. Our data tells us that most people donate on entrance to the gallery. Our assumption is maybe that many visitors are arriving expecting to pay, and then donate as a way to feel like they've contributed towards their experience. So this helps us with things like our messaging, our positioning, and understanding kind of the visitor flow throughout the gallery as well. In terms of things like suggested donation amounts, they're an area where testing is really important as well. And we've spent some time over the past year kind of testing different amounts over both peak and off-peak periods, monitoring conversion, monitoring average donation, and trying to understand what amounts raise the most while feeling reasonable and like good value at the same time. A really interesting trend we've seen recently is the kind of cash versus contactless on site as well, where we're actually seeing still kind of a 50-50 split in cash and contactless, which I think is really interesting given that there's such a decline in cash generally across society. So for us, cash is really important in spite of that. But our data really supports everything we do. At the moment, we're creating a survey so that we can, well, we've put out a survey so that we can understand more about visitors' perceptions of the gallery, of giving, of fundraising more generally, so that we can improve that experience. And that plays a lot into our strategy of that visitor first idea of how visitor giving works. Yeah.
Amazing. Thank you. That's so interesting to hear about such a data-led approach as well, where it's very trial and error, but really using the information that you have at hand to give you that kind of edge as well. Amazing. So it can be hard to make the ask for a donation, especially for team members working front of house. How does your team feel about making the ask, and how do you train and motivate your team to encourage entry donations? Katie, I'll throw over to you.
Yeah, this is a big one for us. So we really started introducing the on-site ask maybe about 8 years ago. And to be honest, there was some initial reluctance or hesitation from some of our team because they felt like they didn't understand how it matched their role and they didn't understand how it fit into what they were doing. So it's taken a few years, but we've actually got it down to a fine art now. So what we've done is we've introduced some kind of tier-based training for our staff. So like Andy mentioned, we have dedicated staff who are trained on donations and operate within a specific pool of staff. And we deliver, it's very peer-led, the training that we do, based on their confidence levels, because it can be quite challenging to stand there. It can be quite daunting to stand when you've got, especially NHM on a busy day, you have potentially hundreds of people coming through in half an hour. How on earth do you do that? It is a challenge. So we run tier-based peer-led training, which has been really, really well received. So it's not coming from us as the management team, it's coming from their immediate colleagues, which works brilliantly. They do kind of on the floor training all the time, which really helps. So that's kind of the training element. And we do refreshers all the time, every few months. But what's really, really helped, we found, is a management presence on the floor, so they feel like the team aren't in it alone. So every single day for at least 2 or 3 hours, there'll be a manager on the floor at the donations point with the team, doing it with them side by side. And that goes all the way up to our head of department. So it's really, the message is it's a whole team effort. We've tried to introduce recognition for strong performers as well. So we have a monthly Employee of the Month, and strong donations results, or even just effort, is recognised. And even something as little as a monthly update with our targets, how we're doing. And even we've got a Teams chat, a Microsoft Teams chat for our whole team, and we'll drop in daily results every hour, especially if we've had a particularly strong spend per visitor hour, if we've hit target or beaten the target. It's the little things that have gone down really, really well. So gaining that confidence for the team, it's gone all the way from like their first induction, ongoing refresher training, to every single day. Hopefully they feel like they've got support. There's still work to be done because not everyone is a natural performer. Not everyone is naturally going to be super, super confident. So there's still work to be done, but it can live or die by the team at those welcome points, the success of this. So they're just the most critical part of this whole operation for us.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's hard to kind of be in a position where you're asking the same question over and over and getting rejected hundreds of times every hour. And it's so great to hear that you have such a robust support strategy to kind of give people the motivation, the confidence, the energy to keep going, which is incredible. Thank you, Katie. Andy, how does this work at the Science Museum?
Thank you, Ali. I think Katie mentions a lot of things which are so right. Buy-in is crucial. So that's across the organisation, not just the front of house teams themselves. And Katie was talking about the management team being visible, and that is so, so important. But actually, the whole organisation buying into this approach is really important. That support needs to come from the top all the way down. And the front of house teams need to feel supported in making that fundraising ask. But also, it's important that we take time to celebrate their success. So that's a great tool, the Teams chat, Katie. And obviously, the team will feel appreciated. They'll feel like they are contributing to the organization's aims, that their work, hard work, is being recognized. And, it's lovely to be able to finish a day and think, well, I contributed to raising this amount for the charity, the organisation. At the Science Museum Group, it's probably fair to say we've made this direct ask to visitors in person, probably the longest out of anyone in the sector. We started in the late 2000s, really, early 2010s. And it was a response to grant in aid being reduced generally to national museums. And we kind of thought we'll trial asking visitors for donations on entry. And you can imagine, maybe people were a bit anxious about this, and you can understand why. We're a free national museum. So mixing that and balancing that with the donation ask on entry, you've got to obviously do that in the right way. But like with everything at the Science Museum Group, we trial and test, and we take the feedback from the team, and we look at the data. And actually, it worked really well. And it worked so well back in 2010 when we tried this, I think, at the National Railway Museum and the Science Museum for the first time. That this approach was rolled out and became a key part of the group's strategy for fundraising at a low level, to the point where just a few years later, we were recruiting this specific role to make this welcome and donation ask called the Visitor Fundraiser. And we still have Visitor Fundraisers across the group. And that was really a big driver behind our success, because I think the most organizations that are trying to introduce a fundraising ask on site for the very first time come across this challenge of getting an incumbent visitor facing team to deliver this ask, because generally museums, especially big national museums, are made up of so many different front of house roles, and they may be recruited at a different time and different roles slightly when they started. And so levels of confidence around a fundraising ask can go from sky high to really low. And so obviously we had success with the incumbent team, but because we started recruiting specialist fundraising teams, it helped us to create a positive culture of fundraising with our visitors that now is so ingrained within the organization and is supported, like I said earlier, from top to bottom, that actually the other front of house roles bought into, because this is the way we do things. This is the norm. It's the new norm. 10, 15 years later. And it's interesting at some of our sites, the National Science and Media Museum, for example, we've got other front of house staff, non-visitor fundraisers, who really want to become visitor fundraisers because they see the team there at the front really enjoying that role, speaking to visitors on entry, enjoying working to targets as well. And that's been crucial for us, is actually embracing targets as a motivational thing, not a scary thing, and not something to be fearful of. Actually, it's a chance to say well done to the teams when they hit targets for fundraising. So the visitor fundraiser role, when we started recruiting for this role, we made it very clear from advert to the recruitment day to when they did their induction. These are the expectations. Actually, this is the role, and let's embrace this. And so we knew that we were recruiting people that were bought in. And I think now we're at a stage where visitor fundraisers and that role are so important to our success. But actually, we've got that confidence within the wider front of house team, the visitor experience assistants that we have across the group, who are crucial to our success. And at London, we have a team that's 100 strong at least, and all of them are trained and understand the expectations around visitor fundraising and are embracing it. So yeah, that's really key. Katie mentioned a few things that we also do. So I guess incentivizing, and we're a charity, so we can't give financial rewards. So it could be actually giving positive feedback. It could be something really small, treats for the team, or we have like a social evening out or something like that to say well done on brilliant result over the half term. And we have little competitions. The beauty of being a group is that you can be creative. We want, wherever you are, if you're in Shildon in County Durham, or you're at the Science Museum in London, we want you to feel part of the same team in fundraising terms. So we have group targets as well as individual museum targets and team targets. And so we sometimes play on that. And there is a healthy competitiveness between the museums. It's really good to see. And that drives the teams on to even better results. But yeah, that hearts and minds piece is the first thing that I think you look at when you're trying to get a team bought into this approach, is getting the team bought in to be able to communicate that to visitors. If you don't get the team bought in and do the hearts and minds, you're not going to be able to communicate the impact of a donation to a visitor. And a couple of things as well to mention is the expectation on the team is not to get a donation from every visitor. The expectation on the team is to ask every visitor if they want to make a donation. And those are two very different things. And I think if you start at the museum and you might think, oh no, yeah, I'm being told no every day, all the time. And actually it's being honest with them and saying, that's normal, that's fine. We expect you to be told no. And actually, that's okay. We are a free national museum. So that ask is very skillful. It should never be a barrier to entry because we understand not everyone can donate or wants to donate, and that's absolutely fine. We're just giving the opportunity to every visitor to make that donation.
Amazing. Thank you, Andy. That's such an important point about the culture of the team and really building that piece where people feel supported, feel empowered, feel valued is really important. And I'm quite excited to hear you've got some friendly competition between your sites. That must be the joy of having multiple sites. You can definitely raise motivation that way. Amazing, thank you. So now, how do you all communicate with the donor? As entry donations are quite transactional in nature, how do you really show that the money is being put to work in often quite short conversations, I imagine? Eve, we'll start with you.
Thanks, Sally. I can't speak to this much from, I suppose, the donation ask on entry, but generally across all fundraising, impact is really important, encouraging people to give. And donors really want to know what difference their gift is going to make and where their money could go. So we try to ensure that all of our messaging focuses on the impact of their support, where their gift is directed to. And I think it was in one of the most recent UK giving reports that I think it said around 20% of people reported that they didn't give to charity because they didn't trust the charity to use their money wisely. So being able to show where donations go, I think, can really help that build that trust as well. And at the gallery, that means explaining that donations are helping us care for our collections, supporting conservation and research, delivering our learning programs, keeping art free and accessible to the widest possible audience. So online, we have opportunities to communicate that, whether it be through our donation web pages, through our ticket journeys, through our comms, like our thank you emails for people that have donated online. And on site, it's slightly more challenging for us because we don't have that ask, but we use our messaging on our donation devices, our digital screens to also briefly explain why people's support matters. And while we don't have that kind of active donation ask on site, at the moment, our front of house colleagues are still really essential and have access to kind of fundraising FAQs so that they're able to, I suppose, explain the broader impact of fundraising, answer any questions on visitor support, and generally feel confident in being able to talk about fundraising in a really positive way, especially given that they're also able to kind of take donations at the till should people ask about it. So it's really important for them to have that kind of wider knowledge of why fundraising matters, and they're wonderful at that. But one of our most important messages is essentially that donations, they help ensure that the gallery remains free, it remains accessible. And I think that's something that visitors can kind of immediately connect with and understand as well, which definitely makes for a good donation ask.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you, Eve. Katie, over to you.
Yeah, so as part of our training, that makes a significant chunk of it is explaining to the staff where the money goes, and it's unrestricted. Like Andy, we're really lucky in that the money raised in this way doesn't have to go to a specific thing. But then that can make it more challenging getting that message across to a visitor in a 10-15 second window is all they have. So what we brief the teams on is kind of big campaigns that the museum is running, or gallery developments, or really visible gallery improvements that they might have seen in recent weeks, months, years, whenever it might be. And that's the message, the skill that they have got to then kind of develop and fine or finesse in their own way is to communicate that quickly. Because that's the main way we have of doing that on-site ask. It's much easier on off-peak days when it's quieter, or later in the afternoon when you've got less big groups coming through the room. We do ask the team to kind of stop and have that conversation. It can be challenging, but we also have, like Eve says, we have on our donation boxes, we also have that messaging saying your money helps run this museum, it funds our scientific research, it looks after our collections, it helps fight biodiversity loss because that's the science that the museum does. So yeah, we haven't got it down to a fine art. It's still a challenge given the volume of people who come through, but that's our primary way of communicating it. But the most key thing for us is making sure that the staff have an awareness of where that money could potentially go, because it also has the added bonus of getting buy-in for them as well.
Yeah, thank you, Katie. And Andy, over to you.
Thank you. Yeah, as visitors enter, our visitor fundraisers and visitor experience assistants, as part of that donation ask, we'll be able to kind of illustrate the impact a donation can have. As Katie said, time is so precious. I always say our fundraisers in in the corporate world, in the philanthropy world, they have months to cultivate a relationship. Our visitor assistants, they have seconds, less than a minute, to find out what makes them tick and deliver that ask. And what we're asking our teams ideally to do is to tailor that ask. So it's a donation ask that means something to them, because we want to win their heart as well as their mind. So if we know they're interested in a particular part of the collection, we can say your donation could support X, Y, Z. As Katie said, unrestricted income, it's a blessing and a curse at the same time, because it could go on anything to support the core running costs of the museum, and that is so broad as when you were talking about impact. With a fundraising with major donors or corporate, you know exactly where that money's going. It's restricted, but the twist on that is that you can tailor the impact of a donation to the visitor in front of you, because it could go on something actually they really, really care about. At some of our sites, it's maybe not as hard to explain what the impact of a donation could be. And I'm thinking maybe at the National Railway Museum, for example, where visitors will go into the museum, be struck by our amazing collection of locomotives and the strong theme of railways, and in their own minds know exactly where that donation is going. It's to support looking after our collection, looking after this amazing set of locomotives that we have in our collection. That's one of the ways it could help us. Another visual kind of indicator of impact is when we do redevelopments across our museum group. So I'm thinking of the Science and Industry Museum in Manchester in particular, and the National Railway Museum again in York, where you cannot help be struck by the mega ambitious plans for the sites. I mean, so a lot of our buildings are covered in scaffolding. We're doing huge capital building works, and it's an opportunity through the hoardings around those sites, through the scaffolding that we have, to actually we could put some messaging on here which illustrates how the impact of a donation could be supporting us caring for our grade 1 and grade 2 listed buildings, for example. So there's lots of opportunities to illustrate to visitors, I think, visually when they come to our museums, what the impact of a donation could be. And online, we obviously want to encourage people to sign up to our emailing lists, and through receiving newsletters, they can see our activity as a group, and donations obviously can support all of the activity we do as a group. And so we use newsletters as well. And we're working on supporter newsletters at the moment as well, specifically for low-level regular donors, which we want to launch soon. So that's another route in which we can illustrate impact.
Amazing. Thank you, everyone. There's some really great ideas there for different strategies that you can take in place. I think, one of the hardest things about, kind of the unrestricted gift is definitely selling something that's maybe not that attractive, like keeping the lights on and keeping the building clean and keeping everything operational. But there are some really creative ways that you can sell that and really illustrate to people just why that is so important. Amazing. So visitor experience is, of course, a very broad topic, but how would you describe the impact of visitor experience on your fundraising strategy specifically? Eve, I'll over to you.
I think it's a really good question. I don't think visitor giving should ever feel kind of separate from the visitor experience, but a natural extension of it almost. It's kind of that cycle, isn't it, of if someone's had a positive or an inspiring experience, they're much more likely to want to support the organisation behind it as well. So we work really closely with our guest experience colleagues whose insight is so helpful in understanding what visitors are seeing, what visitors are thinking, and what they're experiencing kind of on a day-to-day basis, because we want the visitor giving to be visitor-centered and sensitive to the visitor experience as well. We also want donation asks, I suppose, to be clear. We want them to be transparent. It's all about creating kind of those opportunities to give rather than creating pressure to give in any way, shape, or form. I said earlier, we've recently undertaken kind of audience research to better understand our visitor motivations for giving, perceptions of gallery finances, attitudes towards fundraising more generally, and we'll also be running focus groups to explore those themes in a bit more depth. But it's been really interesting to see that feedback from our visitors so far, and that's going to allow us to kind of improve our fundraising based on, I suppose, evidence rather than assumptions, because I suppose the better we understand our visitors, the more effectively we can create kind of giving experiences that feel really relevant and meaningful and appropriate to the audience that we're asking as well.
Amazing. So from a fundraiser's perspective, how do you encourage other teams that you may be working with in the more broader kind of aspects of the organization to really get on board and think about how they could contribute to some of the big picture strategies within their role? Eve, I'll throw over to you.
Thanks, Ali. I think something that's been covered a lot throughout this session is the fact that visitor giving is very much a collaborative effort, because no single team owns the entire visitor journey. So successful visitor fundraising very much depends on working closely with colleagues across the organisation. I feel very fortunate that there's a lot of enthusiasm for visitor giving at the gallery, and many teams kind of already play that really important role. Our guest experience colleagues, for example, they do everything from replacing the batteries in our donation devices, troubleshooting the devices, answering questions from visitors, and they're all really vital things that without them, we wouldn't be able to raise money from our visitors in the same way. But I find in terms of kind of generally how our structure works, sharing data and impact is often the best way to engage colleagues with visitor giving, especially those that aren't that familiar with it, or don't know that much about fundraising. Because when we can, I suppose, show how much income a particular activity generates, or how visitor support contributes towards kind of the gallery's wider mission, it's much easier for people to see where they and their team fit into kind of the wider picture of visitor giving as well. I also think it's really important to make sure that colleagues are involved really early when developing kind of new visitor giving initiatives, so that people feel like they can shape projects and have ownership over them as well. So, for example, with our retail giving, we had kind of a team looking at that and kind of working really closely with our retail team on how we can kind of raise the most money, have the most impact, and continue with a really strong visitor experience whilst being able to do that as well. But I think generally fundraising sometimes seems quite mysterious to teams that aren't in fundraising. So it's trying to kind of demystify it, and showing colleagues that it isn't all about just asking for money, which I feel like is often how people feel, but more about kind of showing the impact, showing how it engages audience, how it kind of deepens that loyalty with our visitors as well, so that people can, across the organisation, actually understand what we do and kind of the impact that it makes.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Eve and Andy.
Eve is absolutely right. It's strange to say fundraising is not just about raising money. It's about that future relationship, that engagement, that building loyalty. It's about making people feel part of something that they love and care about. So obviously, we are trying to generate income for the museum to keep it going, but we want people to be on a journey with us. And I think if you look at any department across the museum, um, there's a lot of overlap in terms of what all our objectives are. Because if you look at marketing and communications, for example, they want to build engagement and loyalty. Yeah, and there's a lot of shared objectives, I think, between departments where we can work together to achieve those, collectively, collaboratively. So yeah, I think that's a key thing, and I think the buy-in is easy to get people on board. I think at the Science Museum Group around fundraising, because that culture is so ingrained, I think, and we have several interdepartmental meetings where we're hopefully being a little bit more joined up about our strategies. So we're looking at overall spend per head as well as donation per head, things like that. And I think, talking of meetings, interdepartmental meetings, all staff, all colleague meetings, briefings, they're really good opportunities for us as a fundraising team to shout about the successes of the front of house teams and what they've achieved throughout the year. And that, I think, it allows people to understand, and it clicks with some people. Oh yeah, that's why we fundraise. I get it now. And that's really important. Going to our volunteer teams and explaining what we've achieved this year as well, because the fundraising we are doing and the income we are raising has an impact, positive impact, on all the work of all the departments in the museum. Another thing that is worth mentioning, I think, as well is, and this goes beyond just fundraising, I think it's making sure that what we, I guess, would term back of house teams are engaging with the work that goes on front of house. We often, in peak times, holiday times, encourage our teams that are in these back of house departments to come down on the floor and help our teams, support our teams, whether it's helping to scan tickets or wayfinding or something like that. Support our front of house teams to understand and appreciate what they do, but give an extra pair of hands to the team in the busiest times. And I think that helps to kind of get that people on board and allow people to understand why we fundraise and the importance of visitor experience.
I think that understanding piece is such an important part of it, to really be in somebody else's roles, see what their day-to-day is like, and understand what their motivations and pressures are as well, is really important. Because we often can start working in sort of silos and be very focused on our piece of the institution. But it is so important for everyone to really see how it all comes together and how it is all so reliant on each other as well. And as our final question for today, maybe to summarize some of the areas that we've already covered, visitor donations, perhaps, as we've discussed, maybe get less attention from teams compared to larger gifts from individuals or trusts, as they maybe require less stewardship or the transactions are not as high in value. How would you make the case for the importance of a really robust frontline visitor giving strategy? Katie, I'll jump to you first.
I think for us, the proof is the success we've had with it. All comes back to data. We do the same thing at NHM. So our results are going up every single year, which is so, so promising to see. And then last year, when we raised over 1 million, that was the most we've ever made. So it's really, really easy for us to then go to senior leadership teams and say, look, this is really impactful. It's really nice, Andy, that you have back of house staff come and spend time on the gallery floor as well. We do exactly the same thing. And speaking from the visitor experience perspective, it's really, really goes down really well with the frontline staff. They really appreciate it. And I think that also helps with the appreciation from those teams as well, as Andy was saying, of the importance of this kind of on-site ask. I think it's something that we're really, really exploring on expanding as well, because it has been such a success for us. So because we've done well, we've been asked to broaden it a little. So now we're being a bit strategic with, for instance, where we're putting new donation kiosks near map points, and we've seen a massive increase in our map sales. Those are technically a donation, but it's also because people are donating for the map. We're trying lots of experimenting little things, but because it's been so successful, it's been a really easy case to say we'd like to invest more in this, whether that's new kiosks, new technology, more staffing resource. Yeah, I think it's becoming more and more recognised now at NHM how key it has been.
Yeah, thank you, Katie. And Eve, over to you.
I feel very similar at the gallery, that it does feel like it's becoming more recognised that visitor giving is such a great stream of income. It generates, substantial unrestricted income, as we've discussed. And at the gallery, it's grown like really significantly in recent years. So it represents a really kind of key income opportunity that supports the organisation's wider work. But as we've said, kind of throughout, visitor giving is often the start of the relationship rather than a one-off transaction. Today's £5 donor could be tomorrow's member or regular donor, legacy pledger, major supporter. You don't know who's coming through your doors. So visitor giving really helps support that pipeline of future giving, which is amazing. And it also sends that really important message about kind of public engagement. Thousands of people choosing to give, no matter what level it is a really powerful demonstration of how much audiences kind of value our spaces and want to support our organisations. I do think internally we need to celebrate the success of visitor fundraising more. I don't think it's something that is done often enough really anywhere, whether it's kind of a key milestone in visitor giving or a particularly successful campaign or a really positive piece of visitor experience. All of those things go a long way to kind of show colleagues internally that it is such a key income stream and kind of deserves the same accolades as a major gift, and support the organisation in exactly the same way.
Absolutely, absolutely. Thank you, Eve. And Andy.
Eve is absolutely right. I think we as management teams need to make sure we're celebrating and shouting about the successes of our front of house teams, not just in fundraising, of course, but in fundraising terms, those small donations add up to a lot over the course of a year, over the course of years. And we often have some of our visitor fundraisers, our visitor experience assistants, who leave the organisation and go on to sometimes fundraising careers, which is really exciting. But we often look at how much they've raised over that time, and it comes to tens, if not hundreds of thousands of pounds that they have raised across that time. And we have an amazing philanthropy team. We have an amazing corporate partnership team, and we always ring the bell when they bring in that high value gift. But I think we should always be conscious that we're doing the same thing and be mindful that we need to do the same thing for our fundraisers on the front line. because it is equally as important. And as we've mentioned already, the people on the front line will be welcoming the major donors of the future as well. So we always have to keep that in mind. And it's the start of the donor journey at the museum doors.
It really does put it into perspective when you say it like that. It is the start of the donor journey, and it's such a critical role. And there are so many fantastic fundraisers sort of doing their bit on the front lines of our organizations. Thank you all so very much for sharing your insights. We've got time for maybe just a couple of questions. If you haven't already, please do pop these into the chat. We've got one that's come through, which I'll just open up to anyone who would like to jump in. What is the biggest trend that you are currently seeing in visitor giving?
I'm happy to answer that one, Ali. I mean, there's a few. I might be greedy and say a few different ones. I think for us, visitor numbers are a bit unpredictable sometimes across the group. I think we exited the pandemic thinking at one moment in time soon, visitor numbers will go back to the pre-pandemic levels. And I think what we're seeing is actually sometimes they are in the holiday times, but sometimes, maybe the non-holiday times, the off-peak periods, maybe they're not quite where they used to be, and maybe we'll still get there. So I think we're trying to manage visitor number trends, and that has a big impact, of course, for us in terms of fundraising, because the more visitors come through our doors, the more opportunities there are to raise money in terms of donations. So that's something that we are very conscious of. And if visitor numbers are lower than expected, we need to make sure we're making the most of those interactions, and we can have more time with that visitor and explain the impact of a donation a little bit better. And yeah, we can focus on conversion and donation per head. And donation per head has generally over the last couple of years gone up for us. So even when we are getting less visitors, DPH continues to grow, which when you put against the backdrop of cost of living is really interesting, because obviously people have less money in their pockets. People are visiting on a budget, a very tight budget, a lot of people, but it shows that people, even in these times, do really want to support national museums because they are so important to them. And I think if you think about a family visiting, they might leave a donation, but the alternative day out for them could have been a theme park where they could be spending hundreds of pounds for their whole family to go and visit. So I think we're in a good position as national museums, as free national museums. We're open for all, and if people choose to donate, obviously that's great for us. Another trend, just to mention, is I think Eve might have mentioned it earlier around, I guess, the rise of contactless and card. And it's just to make the point that, yes, we see obviously card and contactless transactions going up over the years at all our sites as a proportion of the overall income we're receiving. But I would always say there's still a place for cash. And it's important we're giving everyone the opportunity to donate, no matter how they want to donate. If we look at overall on-site donation income at London, for example, if we go back to the beginning of 2022, 50% of our overall on-site donation income was donated by card. Now this is towards or over 75%, but 25% cash donations is still a lot of money that we need. And also, I think from a visual point of view, when you see a donation box and it's cash, it's kind of messaging in itself, and it's kind of showing an expectation, or telling us, yes, we really appreciate donations. I don't know if there is a as equally powerful alternative for contactless and cash, contactless compared to cash. So yes, contactless is important, but don't forget cash.
Yes, that's such an interesting point, Andy. And definitely from my front of house days, I remember the satisfaction of seeing the cash box fill up. There's something really tangible just about that visual experience. Anybody else want to join in or have any thoughts?
I think Andy's covered everything that I was going to say. I was very much going to say, if you're ever thinking about kind of getting rid of the opportunity to donate by cash, don't, because it's really still worth having.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone. That is all we have time for today. Thank you so much to Eve, Andy, and Katie for your time this afternoon and for everyone who joined us online. I definitely learned so much from this conversation and have a lot more appreciation for the teams who are making the ask on the front line. Amazing. Just before we wrap up, we are very excited to also announce the return of Evolve, our professional development program designed to help you grow in your fundraising career through mentoring, peer support, and tailored guidance. Applications open on Monday, 20th of July and close on the 9th of August. We'd love to receive your applications. Details are in the chat or visit our webpage to learn more. Keep an eye out on socials for our next YAF event and do sign up to our newsletter if you haven't already. Thank you so much for joining. See you next time.